Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you for stopping by to watch. It's been a busy week here on the homestead, and I'm telling you, I am wore out. I've still got some stuff left to do today to finish up some projects, but man, I feel old. I'm sure many of you can understand what that's like. I've been kind of talking about it over on the Patreon page, so if you're interested in knowing a little bit more detail, I release a little bit more personal information over there. It's a little bit more of a smaller audience, you know. Not quite as public as here on YouTube. Anyways, today's subject, I thought long and hard about this one, something I've been wanting to talk to y'all about. And I'm sure in the back of your minds, many of you have thought this. But there's probably going to be some of you that's going to be uncomfortable with this. And it's about, man, I don't even know how to title this. I don't even know what to say as a subject. But police that typically conservative, patriotic type of people, that they typically support police, you know, not all of them, but some of them are really destroying and stepping all over individual rights. And so I don't want this video to come across as me just being, you know, bashing the police and police are bad and all that kind of stuff, because that's not it. There's enough of that on the left. But we have to be careful not to, I don't know, just be gullible enough to believe that that law enforcement is always has our best interest in their hearts. And I'm coming at this video today from a perspective as former law enforcement myself. So it's not like I'm just giving my opinion because I don't like police. That's not it. Like I said, I spent a good 15 years in law enforcement, and so I have that perspective. In fact, I went into law enforcement before 9/11, so I saw the transition in law enforcement prior to that, and then what happened after 9/11, how law enforcement really changed to where we're at today, that while there are still many good law enforcement officers, and some entire departments that are really good, and typically your smaller, more rural departments can be pretty decent, and there's a lot of good guys. I'm related, I have people in my family and friends that are in law enforcement, so you know, I'm not on here to disparage or to, you know, attack or anything like that police, but we have to realize that in the end, whatever laws that are passed, or whatever edicts that are, you know, handed down from governors and mayors and the president and Congress and representatives all across the country, the person that's actually enforcing those laws is the one typically that has the badge and the gun. It's not the one that passed the law. It's the one that's, you know, out there on the streets. And too many times, especially here lately, more and more, these guys and gals that many of us support and say, you know, we're on your side, seems like they're turning against us. And I'm actually kind of struggling with what to say and how to say it in the right way, because I don't want any mixed messages being sent with this video today. So let me start it off with this. Just in the last few days, most of you probably are aware of this, but just in the last few days, and I wish I could put the video clips up on my videos, like, you know, a picture-in-picture up on the side, but the technology that I'm using does not allow that. I'm sorry. I know it exists, but I have really slow internet, and I'm very limited in the cool editing capabilities. So anyways, there's videos out of just in the last few days of people being arrested at an open-air prayer service. It was a church service that was being held, and people were worshiping, and they were singing hymns. And you could easily see, and the vast majority of them were wearing masks, but there were 3 people, I believe, that were pulled out of that service. I'm not exactly sure. It looked like it was in, maybe a parking lot or something like that. But they were pulled out of that service, and they were put into handcuffs, and they were taken away because they were not properly social distancing. And it was pretty odd because you could, just from the video, it looked like that everyone was pretty much standing next to each other. It wasn't like that there was a very definite, a distance between each one. But for whatever reason, these 3 people were pulled out. They were very polite to the police officers. There was no resistance whatsoever. And then the crowd of people continued praying and continued singing, and they didn't do anything either. And I'll get to that in a minute. Then the other video that's out there is this woman, a mother, at I believe it was a middle school. At first I thought it was high school, but I read today that it was a middle school football game. And of course it's outside, and the school had a requirement that everyone wear masks. She was definitely several feet away from anyone. She was not sitting next to anyone. And a school resource officer, who was a police officer with the local department, came and told her that she needed to leave because she wasn't wearing a mask, and she refused to do so, stated that she had asthma and that there was, she was okay because no one was around her. And he proceeded to arrest her, and in the pursuit of arrest, she resisted. She did not fight back. She just passively resisted, and he tased her. And then there's another one, and that one's getting a lot of airtime. Everyone's talking about that one. And then there's another one that's not getting talked about too much, and it was during some of these riots. It was either last night or the night before, so it's been recently. There was a person in a car. These rioters had blocked off the streets. You know how they do. You've all seen it. And they surround cars, and they yell at them, and they punch the car, and all this kind of stuff. This person was trying to get out of there and was able to get through them. You could see in the video that they didn't hit anyone. No one was struck by the vehicle, but they were able to get through the crowd and took off. Well, they didn't take off fast enough. And some people in the crowd had their vehicles, and they followed them in their vehicles. They used their vehicles to block them in, so the car is now blocked in from front and behind. And the rioters proceeded to smash the windows out of the car and attempted to pull the person out of the car. And you can see this from a helicopter camera. Sorry, my turkeys have surrounded me. They're off camera. Yelling at me. Anyways, so they're bashing the windows out of this car, and they're trying to pull the person out of the car, and the person floors it. And amazingly, again, no one was run over. You can see in the video they were able to kind of wiggle around between the vehicles and get away. And this time they really took off, only to be stopped by law enforcement, who pulled the person out at gunpoint and arrested him in the street and took him away. I have not heard yet why they even arrested the person, and if the person is still in jail, if the charges have been dropped. But, so that's just 3 instances in the last few days. Through all the pandemic, junk that's going on, and through all this rioting and just the social upheaval, my opinion is that more times than not, we have seen law enforcement arrest people that seem to be not doing anything wrong most of the time, as opposed to arresting the people that are actually causing chaos. In fact, I was speaking to my wife about this, and most of the times that I have actually seen police really crack down and arrest people is usually when those crowds start, attacking the police themselves, or facing off against the police, not complying directly with police orders. I don't see the police doing a whole lot, and I'm not saying it's not happening, just haven't seen a lot of it, where they're arresting people because they're attacking other individuals, or they're attacking other, businesses, destroying businesses and burning and looting. I know that's happening. I'm not saying that they're not arresting people that are doing those things, but it seems that there's not a lot of enforcement. And I know there's a lot of reasons. Mayors are giving stand-down orders, liberal, top brass of the police departments. I get it, but I don't want to go into that right now. The fact is that many times, I understand, you're all probably thinking of the guy up in Kenosha that, defended himself with his AR and is now sitting in jail. He's not the only one. That's just the highest profile case. There's lots of people that have defended themselves. They may not have killed someone, but they've certainly defended themselves against the protests, the protesters, the rioters, and they ended up, the people that were protecting themselves, defending themselves, ended up going to jail. There were even some people that were out doing a rally, a pro-police rally, okay? They were out doing this rally, praising police officers, saying that they defend police officers, and the police came in and arrested a bunch of them. There have been people all over the country and all over the world that's been arrested and cited because they weren't social distancing, they weren't wearing a mask. Most of these orders come from a governor, and it's going to be interesting how the courts in the long run uphold these executive orders that come from governors, because they're being enforced as laws. And in many states, not every state, but in many states, these executive orders really don't hold the same strength as a law. That's not how our system is set up, that a governor or a mayor can just issue a law without any checks or balances. So I'm saying all this to say that we have to be careful. And I'm not saying go out and not trust police officers. If there's any police officers, law enforcement that's watching, you don't have to speak up. It's okay if you do. I think the people that watch my channel would be supportive of you. But those of you in law enforcement, it's time that now, like it's past time, but you have to draw that line in the sand and choose which side you're going to be on. And I know you're saying, but we're law enforcement, we're not supposed to pick sides. I'm not talking left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. I'm not talking black versus white. I'm not talking about that kind of sides. I'm talking about right versus wrong. Okay? When you're tasing someone, and I know there's a lot of people, the woman that got tased for not wearing a mask, there's a lot of people saying, well, she wasn't leaving, she was trespassing, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, she was. But it all started because they were telling her to leave because she didn't have a mask on and she wasn't around anyone. When we are ignoring, and that's putting it lightly, people's individual rights, because we're just enforcing an edict, we're enforcing a law because someone told us to, then we have a problem as a people. When there's no common sense, when these laws trample on individual rights, when people aren't even allowed to defend themselves. That couple up in St. Louis that all they did was basically stand out on their, these people were coming in, they broke in through their gate, and they were threatening to do physical harm to them and their property, and they stood out there with, weapons drawn to protect themselves, telling them to leave. And they ended up getting arrested and their firearms taken from them. And I understand it's activist DAs a lot of time. And it's not this way all over the country, because it is usually in the places that have these activist DAs and these very left-leaning governors and mayors, and they're basically liberal strongholds. You don't see it that much in the rural area. But the point today is that we have to be careful as individuals of believing that in the end, the law enforcement and the military will always choose the right side. Many of them will. I believe that many of them will. But the reason why I'm saying this is because like I said in the beginning, started in law enforcement prior to 9/11. And I saw a very drastic change in just the whole nature of law enforcement in this country after 9/11 hit. before 9/11, there was still very much this very local mentality of law enforcement, that each agency was independent and on their own, and that for the most part, most law enforcement agencies, other than the really big ones, still viewed themselves in a protect and serve capacity. It was almost like a more modernized, Mayberry RFD kind of thing. Most law enforcement officers viewed themselves as that. They did not view the average person as an enemy or a potential suspect or a potential threat. After 9/11, a lot of funding went into federal funding went into local police departments, with an attempt to kind of almost federalize or nationalize law enforcement, or at least to bring all law enforcement up to the same standard and training level. And within that training, and I went through it myself, so I know it firsthand, I could see the change that the individual on the street, the average citizen, was no longer really considered innocent until proven guilty. That we were taught that everyone could be a potential threat, that everyone could be a potential terrorist, that everyone could be a domestic terrorist, and that anyone that spoke out against government, that anyone that organized against government, that they could be a potential domestic terrorist. This was the kind of training that was coming out. And there was also a lot of training talking about, there may come a day that you have to, arrest or even shoot people, your neighbors, your fellow citizens, but you have to do it for the greater good. I remember hearing the terms of the greater good being spoken about. I went through a lot of training, not just on a local level, but I trained on a federal level too, and with some federal agencies, and I heard a lot of that on the federal level. The point is that while there are many, again, I keep wanting to emphasize, there are many good law enforcement officers out there, there's also a lot, and I mean a lot, that in the end they're going to protect their pension, they're going to protect their salary, they're going to protect their position, because they have a family to take care of. And as many people, and even law enforcement officers, that might say, oh, no, we would never do that, we would never do that. I'm sure in places like Nazi Germany, there were individuals that said, I just can't do this, this is the wrong thing to do, but they ended up doing it because they were given an ultimatum. You either enforce these rules and these laws, do it this way, or else. And that's what it could come down to. There's a lot of pressure on law enforcement from higher levels to enforce, and to keep civility, and to not use your own discretion. That used to be a thing. It used to be a thing taught in law enforcement, that to use your own discretion when enforcing a law. And now it's not. They want a law enforced regardless of the situation. They don't want any common sense, that an understanding that while a law may have been broken, there's an understanding of why, and so it needs to be handled. There's very little de-escalation training being done. Everyone is viewed as a threat, and everyone is to be taken down very quickly and very hard. And so we have to be aware of that. And I don't really have any actionable, orders for you. I'm just saying that, not to turn our backs on law enforcement, but we need to put pressure on law enforcement. People, if you have friends and family, talk to them. They may become defensive. Law enforcement officers are defensive. I know, I was one. But we cannot always depend upon them, or military people, current military people, being your friend. And I'm not poo-pooing anyone in the military. I know firsthand, and I've talked to many people that tell the same kind of story in the military, that a lot has changed in the last several years. A lot of the training, a lot of the psychological training that goes on. So I know that that's also a thing there. And we have to be careful that, believing that in the end, surely our own people in uniform aren't going to enforce these things. I know a lot of people say, well, our own people in uniform wouldn't do it. They'll have to send in UN troops or foreign troops to enact their laws. I don't think so. They may come in a support fashion, but we are seeing on our streets right now, we are seeing individual rights being walked all over, left and right. And they're being done by United States officers, not foreign officers. This is something a lot of us have been preaching about for many years, the dangers of big brother government, the dangers of allowing the government and the police powers to get so much that we've developed ourselves into a police state. And we've allowed it to happen over the last few decades because, well, our men and women in uniform are patriotic too, and they're our friends and our neighbors, and so they're not going to use those powers to turn against us, even if they're ordered to. We cannot continue to believe that because we're seeing it right now in our own streets in America. So, again, as I end this video, I am not here to really attack law enforcement or military in any ways. I'm here to hopefully wake some of you guys and gals up that are in uniform, because I used to be one, so I know what it's like. And for the rest of us, understand that they're being used as pawns to enforce this regime that we're seeing, just one right after another. Laws and ordinances changing and being passed. We're watching it happen right before our eyes, and it's unfortunate that law enforcement, military are being used in that way. But we knew it was going to happen. I mean, who else was going to enforce all this new world order, right? All right, folks, that's about all I have today. If you want to get a hold of me, there's some ways to do that down in the description below. There's also some affiliate links to some products that are amazing. I vet them personally, and you can check them out. And yeah, I do get a little bit of a cutback, but they're good products for a good price. And I thank you for checking those out for me. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.